21, I'm in the kitchen making everyone chai tea like a good Indian girl. As everyone sits at our dining room table to discuss if the boy is a suitable match for me. He had been scouted from a family member, and my dad was eager to give me away. I sat there across the table and made small talk with a stranger that I should consider marrying. I don't remember much of that day, but that was the start of the process of my arranged marriage. Flash forward 6 months later, we got married. Within 5 years, we had kids. And that is when my symptoms of depression, anxiety, stomach issues, and exhaustion began to be my new normal. I remember being at home for an entire year, having to drag myself out of bed, take my children to school, and come back home and force myself to eat something, and then back to bed until it was time to pick them back up. I was off work for over a year because my body was shutting down and I had no capacity. My husband would look at me, Nina, it's all in your head, and said, pull yourself together. I started going to a naturopath, doing coaching, and everything I could do to feel better as I didn't know what was wrong with me. After a year or so, I started to feel better. Assert more boundaries with my relationship with my husband. And I started working out more and having new hobbies. I could tell he didn't like the changes I was making. And after a while, we stopped sleeping in the same bed. I married the wrong man, and I no longer wanted to be married. I built my life around other people's expectations, was always over functioning, and I had little to no connection with myself and who I was, or what I wanted until I did the inner work that changed everything. And now today, I help women stop over functioning in relationships and help them reconnect to themselves so they can start living life on their terms.
That's beautiful because that, to me, lets everyone know that just because a relationship, whether if it's arranged or something that you created from dating, courting, and so on, that there could be highs, there could be lows, there could be everything in between. When you tell us that, Nina, and you look back on what you're going through at that time, what are some of the emotions that you're feeling today?
Some of the emotions I feel is I feel a sense of, I just feel blessed and grateful and a sense of happiness that I never did once I've done all that inner work.
The inner work, we hear that a lot. I know I've said it. You've probably said it. It's all around. We hear words like witnessing and self-awareness and things like that. What I sometimes think the work truly is people pleasing. You may want to stop doing that. Sometimes we want to please our parents, our family. We want to please every single person but ourselves. Women specifically, we hear that they give and they give and they give, and at the end of the day, when they're looking at their own cup, it's empty. But everyone else's cup is in abundance as they go live their lives and they're
Mhm.
stuck on empty. Why do you think, in general, so many women are struggling with maybe putting themselves first, either romantically or professionally?
I can only speak for myself, my own journey. And the reason I was struggling and I wasn't connected to myself. When you talk about inner work, I didn't even know what the word emotions meant because it was never taught to me in childhood. So most of my stuff originated from childhood. From my parents were good people, but they took on programming as children. So I didn't know how, so I basically, as a child, I knew what I knew. So as I grew up, I didn't know how to be connected to my emotions. And I think most looking at my own story, I think a lot of women aren't connected to their emotions. And if you don't know how to feel, and still I find there's still a lot of bypassing going on. Women like don't know how to feel at the core. Okay. And that was my journey is learning how to feel. And that was a process. That didn't happen because I was so emotionally stunted on all levels. I didn't know how to take an emotion and sit with it and process it, and then also look at the patterns that was causing all that. So that was a huge journey for me. So I started that in 2006. And I would say it wasn't until 2025 that really hit the core that I could really feel. So I think women are generally overgiving because they don't know how to feel. If they knew how to feel and know how to put in a boundaries for themselves, that also wasn't stuff and taught to me. And also around how to process patterns from childhood. So the work that I did was a mix of feeling my emotions as well as processing them and connecting the dots, as well as looking at my core programming. And then top of that, having effective boundaries. So it's a combination of all of that. And that's why I feel that women are overwhelmed. They just keep going to autopilot, which I did most of my life as well. And it wasn't only the last number of years that I really connected to my emotions that I started. I'm not running around over functioning for everybody.
Running around without any direction or running around just in a single file saying that I got to make sure everyone else is okay before I'm okay.
100% not having any self-love for myself. And that for me only started when I really realized, started feeling.
Did you think that you were worthy of the love that you're talking about now back then?
Oh no, because there was so much programming coming from a cultural background. It's like when everybody's doing the same thing and you don't see anybody else doing something different, you're blocked. And your friendships, they kind of know what they're going on. And I always say people will only support you at their level of consciousness. So I really didn't have a huge support system, and also I didn't have a lot of cousins growing up. My father was the only child. So I didn't have any of that. So it was basically, I was kind of left my own. I didn't have a whole bunch of support. I just had to do all this search on my own to be where I am today.
Someone I used to work with, not sorry, someone I used to work with as a coach and a mentee, she is in her mid 60s now.
Mhm.
And she said from when she got married in her 20s and that ended before her 30s and she has a child with that person, from 30 all the way until about 55, she was people pleasing. She said, Terrain, if someone asked me to do something and I knew in my soul that I couldn't do it, I couldn't tell them no. I would sacrifice parts of myself to make that other person happy. And when she shared that story, Nita, I asked her, would that person sacrifice a part of themselves for you? She's like, oh no, they would never do that. And then I asked her, I was like, so who is more important to you? Confirmation from someone else who wouldn't treat you the way that you would want to be treated, or yourself, who you have 100% control over who you want to be treated? And she struggled to answer that question. And the reason why she struggled to answer that question is she couldn't live with the disappointment of telling someone no.
Mhm.
Is that
And
something that you went through? Go ahead.
yeah, and that was such a journey for me because it's so ingrained in us as women, I think. It's so ingrained in us not to say no. There's so much programming behind that. It comes from childhood, it comes from the way your parents lived life, and as women in general, we just don't know how to say no. So for me, once I started really looking at my emotions and I started looking at the relationships I had, started shifting myself and started feeling uncomfortable in situations, that was the only how and start putting boundaries and started seeing where all those patterns came from. That's when I really started saying no. And you know what? I have to be honest, Terrain. It was very uncomfortable because I had to sit with this, And when and that reminds me, 2025. Oh my God, when I say where I really, really awakened was mid of 2025. I had a situation where I was kind of connecting with someone, and it was a dating thing, and it was really interesting because I'm like, no, I'm not chasing, I'm not chasing, I'm not doing this as much as I like this person. I'm not chasing, I'm not doing it. And oh my God, I really sat with that motion. Usually people distract, we distract by texting a friend, hey, what should I do? Or calling a coach or whatever it may look for you, go shopping, right? But I said, no, this was taught to me in with my coaching and all the mentors and workshops I did. I'm going to sit with this emotion. So I actually sat with this for about 4 months. I sat with this. I didn't get the urge to text this person. I didn't get the urge to send out a funny video or, hey, I'm thinking about you, get the attention. I sat with that. And what was surprised me was my entire journey, my mentors and coaches were saying, Nina, sit with it and journalize. Well, guess what? Nina thought that was all silly, stupid stuff. Even though she followed her coach's advice, you know, and played with the tools. But then when she had to sit with it, it was hard. But you know what? That emotion, the more I sat with it, or I did journalize as well. And the more I sat with it, it just started dissipating. It didn't have a hold on me anymore. And that was a beautiful feeling. And then I reconnected with this person. And it was like, I just couldn't care. It was like, it just flew off me, like, not care in a like uncompassionate way, great person, but not for me. That's all.
That takes courage to realize that you need to do some work because I think so many of us think that everyone else is the problem but us, right? And it could be difficult. And when you mentioned the dating part, it brought me to a situation where, and I shared this not too long ago, where someone was they have a circle of friends. It was a woman, and she has a couple of friends, and they're all getting married around within the same year, right? And
Mhm.
everyone's planning their marriage and their wedding, sorry, and she's the odd woman out. So now she's starting to get anxious. Okay, I need to
Mm.
find someone so I can fit into this calendar of weddings.
Mm.
Enter terrain, da 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 da, with my superhero cape on and everything. We went on a date, and I remember towards the end of the date, she's like, "Okay, let's have a conversation. Where is this going? Things like that." I said, "Perfect. Yeah, I think that's perfect time. See if there's going to be a second date." That's my thinking. She
Mm.
says, "Terrain. In 3 months, I want to be engaged. In 6 months, I want to be married, and in 9 months, I want to be pregnant and have a child." I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa."
Oh, a woman on a mission.
A woman on a mission,
I love
So
it.
now I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to drive you home. Are you gonna kidnap me? And I'm not gonna,
Oh, that's funny.
right? I'm not gonna be allowed out of whatever cave or place you came out of. And I share that because sometimes what's around us can influence our behavior. Sometimes what's around us can influence our expectations. To your point, right? You had a childhood and there's certain expectations placed upon you when you had this marriage. When it didn't work out, you pivoted and you tried to figure something else out. Some people unfortunately can't do the pivot because maybe you have to be vulnerable, maybe you have to be do the inner work, maybe you have to be self-aware. When you became self-aware of what you wanted, how was that journey for you?
Wow. So, like I said, the journey is actually with what I was suffering with, the depression, anxiety. I was looking for what's wrong with me. Why am I so tired all the time? Why do I feel anxiety all the time? Like, what is in my life that's not right? So I went on a search. I have huge determination and motivation. And so I went there, worked with, I would do quick fixes. I didn't know there were quick fixes until I started diving into the deep work in 2006. When they say there's a little, they say, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. So basically, 2006, that's what happened to me. And I started working with somebody, a coach, mentor, a naturopath doctor. And that's when I became self-aware. I started slowly becoming self-aware. And then it was 2009 where I realized that I had married the wrong person. And the emotions started coming up as she started clearing more blocks internally. And that's when I started having aha moments. And I have to share with you that the hardest part for me, because I had such deep childhood programming, was connecting the dots. When I remember when my mentor said, connect the dots, I'm like, what is this woman talking about? Connect the dots. That was the hardest journey. But when I started connecting dots to my childhood, why this happened, and I didn't want to blame anybody. And I had such really, really good mentorship. I'm very blessed there. So when I really started connecting the dots, I had aha moments. And I saw that there was no one to blame, but that's just how I was raised. My parents were bad parents. It's just how I was raised.
Is that hard to accept that my parents aren't bad parents? That's just part of their programming and their patterns?
Is it hard to accept? No. After doing something called the mirror work. So the wounds we have, we how do I explain this? Our relationships show them to us, are mirrored back where we need to heal. So because I had done all this work and I had some great mentors, I was able to see all the wounds reflecting back and mirroring, and I saw the mirror. So I wasn't, yeah, but also during the journey, that being said, I had months and weeks because I had suppressed so much into my body as a child. Because what we don't heal, we suppress, it will come up until we feel it and heal it. So that was hard. So there was months and months where I went on being very angry at my father. It was my father. I remember being very, very angry. But as I sat with those, I kept doing the coaching, kept doing the work, I found that really, really started settling with me. It started just melting away. And it was very interesting. My father now, I mean, he gets it. Like he will never say, yeah, we were wrong, but he gets it. I know it. I can feel the energy and the way he speaks to me. We connect differently. He gets it. He gets it.
What your body will whisper, and if you ignore it, your body will scream. If you ignore that, your body will start to shout. And once it's the part where it's shouting, that's where your fingers start tingling. Maybe your legs are sore. We talked about numbness in the lower body. Your body will show you the trauma. It's at what point do you start paying attention to your body, right?
Yeah, and that was interesting. This was happening to me as a child. I look back, I think it was 8 or 9, and I remember back, I used to have my stomach used to act up all the time. And at that time, I didn't know that I was reacting to my environment. It wasn't later after I got married, had children, the stressors were larger, and that stomach problems were diagnosed as irritable bowel syndrome. So I remember that, and then I just had a diagnosis. Underneath was more, depression, anxiety, and exhaustion. And what I learned from my journey is our body, if we don't feel things when like things are happening, we just suppress them, oh, it'll go away because we don't know how to feel, then we just stuff them in our body and they become intense and intense. And my wake up call was huge. Like 2006, I was the end of my rope. I was willing to do anything to get better. And I remember one of my main mentors said to me, you do the work, you'll become symptom free. And then she said, it's a long journey. And I'm like, at that time, I didn't question her. I just wanted to get better because I started really believing in her. So that was two things. And she said, your children will become like you and you'll live the life you want and you find your soul purpose. At the time, I was just so focused on getting better. So yeah, for me, it was the symptoms that really screamed me out. And I had worked on so many other stuff, it didn't work. And this person came to my life in 2006. I started doing the work, and then I worked with several other mentors as I needed to as the journey evolved. And here I am today, finding my sole purpose as a personal growth coach supporting women.
What are some of the obstacles the women that you work with are facing when it comes to their own journey?
I think what I'm seeing is now looking back on my own journey to healing. I think they're really, even now I see it, and I can't call them out on it. If I can sense it, when they talk to me or whatever, they're feeling frustrated and overwhelmed. And underneath that frustration and overwhelm, they don't know what's causing it. They don't know. Because, like I said, emotions are the core of everyone, male or female. But as women, I think we're more emotional. We're made up of emotions, you know? And if we're not taught how to feel, then we overfunction. We overgive, and then we start getting symptoms. We may get headaches. We might start getting hormonal issues, I mean, or having anxiety, but not knowing um where the anxiety comes from. So a lot of my work is around helping women connect to their emotions and help them process them, and then look at the patterns where it came from for programming, and also help them connect the dots, and then also learn how to have effective boundaries in their life. Because that was another thing. I had no boundaries in my life. I didn't know what the word boundaries meant. And now I would say I'm a boundary queen.
A life without boundaries, Nina? Oh my God, I couldn't imagine what you were going through at that point.
It's tough because it wasn't something that was taught to me. And that was hard because I remember the first time I put a boundary with someone, and it was another woman. It was, what year was it? Around 2010, 2011, I remember, because I was still on the healing journey. Because the healing didn't really happen until like later on, where I really got everything that I was being taught. Or I remember this person, when I said the word no, hung up on me. Literally hung up on me. I'm like, whatever. I was so, also I was having healing crisis at that time. Part of my journey, because I had stuff so much, I was having healing crisis. So I wasn't feeling well. And I just didn't want to go do whatever their expectations was. I said, no, they hung up on me. And that was also reminding me of having that boundary aha moment right now. Did anything happen? Because we have this fear in our bodies that, or underneath all of it, that person may lashes. We have so much fear that something terrible is going to happen if we put in a boundary. But I think having a boundary, it's a gift. It really is a gift. I see it now for myself and also for the people in my life.
It is a way to protect ourselves. And you're right that so many of us, we create a scenario in our minds, worst possible case, right? If I tell Nina no, she's going to blow up my house. Right? It's just something so extreme. Or, oh my God, if I tell her no, am I going to live to see tomorrow? Whereas you tell someone no, their life will continue forward. They may be upset, like in the example you gave. Or I remember I told someone no, and he was dropping f bombs on the phone, like he was just cursing and cursing and cursing, and I just said, "Well, thank you so much for this reaction, but I do need to go," and I disconnected the call. Right? It's we sometimes are our worst own enemy because we create a situation where we're always saying yes to specific people, and the specific people we always say yes to, they are a type, and then we put ourselves secondary. So now when we say no, we're showing that person something they're not used to, so we can understand the rage, like, oh my God, you're reacting to me in a way that I'm not accustomed to. And I can understand the anxiety because you're responding in a way that you may not have responded for years, but you always wanted to. How can we understand the emotions of it from the person's perspective who's created that boundary in saying no?
Well, people think that saying no is a bad thing. When you say no, it's self-love for yourself, and also respect for yourself, and also having a better understanding with that person in your life, right? I think if you have boundaries, the relationships function so much better. But those boundaries must come from peace and love. They don't come from anger, you know? I'm going to say no because I just don't like you. you know? You say no because it is self-love for yourself, it's respect for yourself, it's also respect for the other person and their time or whatever that boundary may look like. And that's how I look at boundaries today. They're not meant to, they're meant to be peace within a relationship.
They're not prisons, they're protections.
100%. Yeah, it's love. I really think that the boundaries is love. It's a form of love for everybody.
There was someone I was working with, and he was dating this girl, and this girl had friends, male friends. She has male and female friends, but the male friends, there's this one guy. He used to always make these jokes that when they had get-togethers, this friend would say things like, "Oh, look at all the women I have over my house, because I'm so good looking." So he made it seem like a sexual thing, but there wasn't anything going on, at least that I'm aware of, anyways. So, right? But the boyfriend in this case said, "Hey, I'm not comfortable with this," and he was setting a boundary because he gave the example. And I love when people do this. Is if it was the reverse and there's a woman saying those things about me, how would you take that? And she would be upset. So they're creating this boundary. And when he was sharing this with me, Nina, I asked him, why did that boundary need to be created anyways? They're friends, right? Like it was just an odd thing. Like I would ask him that because I'm not used to my female friends making sexual jokes like that about me. I don't know if you are or you're not, right? So when they created that boundary, the friend who was being impacted by that boundary, he had a difficult time, but he eventually agreed.
Mhm.
A year and a half later, that relationship ends. So now this guy was telling me that now he's seeing photos and videos of these people together and the girl and that guy at the house. So he's thinking, was there something maybe he missed? Was there something, or was it just she agreed just to maintain the peace, but deep down she didn't want to maintain the boundary? What are your thoughts on situations like that where you have people in a relationship, it's going well, one partner is bothered by something, they want a boundary, the person agrees, but it seems like they're reluctantly agreeing to the situation or to the boundary?
Hmm. That person, maybe they're just not really sure of the situation on an emotional level. So they're agreeing with it at that point, and maybe they don't understand boundaries, how important that boundary is to the other person. And oftentimes we're tested around boundaries, and people just kind of bypass us.
When you say tested, tested in what way? What do you mean by tested?
Tested, I think people will test you on boundaries. Like, are they like, God, I'm trying to think of a situation where that's happened to me. Okay, so you place a boundary with someone, um, I will return your phone call as soon as I'm available. Okay, because we're all busy, running a business or whatever, working as well. But your phone keeps ringing off the hook, right? So that's one boundary where people try to test you, and you have to stay. And I'm kind of dealing with that with some of my friends right now. You have to stay true to yourself. When there's a boundary placed, it's not a place of not love, it's a place of respect again. So you have to stick with that boundary. I think oftentimes we get tested our boundaries. I've got tested many times as I'm in this role or as I'm moving in life, especially after I did my healing, just with friends and family. And that maybe, and oftentimes people feel uncomfortable. Oh, will people not like me if I place that boundary? Will I be disliked? This gain of fear come up. But I guarantee you that people respect you more when you have boundaries.
I think that's what happened in their case. I think her trying to put up boundaries around these friends made her realize that they didn't have the best interest for her. But unfortunately, when the relationship ended, now she had no one else. And for a lot of people, if you have a choice with being with the devil or alone, a lot of people will pick the devil. because being alone for a lot of people is tough. What are your thoughts?
It's hard, I've set a boundary that I'm very intentional in all of my relationships. And when I set a boundary, it's a boundary. It's a no. And I've actually come across a lot of things in the last 11 years where I've been single. Again, it goes back to dating, and I've been tested. I've been tested many times, Um, and that just makes me like up level myself more, in a good way that I stuck with that boundary.
I'm a big proponent of boundaries. I remember someone at work asked me, Train, how come you seem so happy? I was like, well, my boundary doesn't allow people with negative energy around me. They're like, I was like, relax. You're okay. You're safe. You've passed the test. Right? Because you can see in their eyes, they're like, oh my God, is he able to? I always found it difficult, especially on this side of my journey. But I get it because there was a time where I was influenced by the people around me. There was a time where, you know what, my boundaries, to your point, it was tested. And I was like, okay, it's a Monday. Let's start the week off. Why be difficult terrain? Let's just allow the person. I couldn't anymore. And the firmer my boundaries, the more I began to realize that it's a filtration system where you get so good at it, the people that are filled with chaos, they don't even want to be around you because, like, ugh, he's gonna tell me no before I even ask. Yes, I am gonna tell you no before you even ask. Right?
Yeah,
What's something that? Go ahead.
so we're all energy. And I think, and talk's not about energy, but because we're all energy, once we start putting those things in place, boundaries, we shift internally because we have processed our emotions. We know connect the dots, we have boundaries, we know where they came from. You're no longer operating from that energetic that you used to be. So you shift. And I remember a lot of my relations first fell off. It was sad. But then I felt and then I also looked, I thought I was being a bad person, but then I noticed, no, this was me. I was becoming the new me. And I remember going back, that reminds me, one of my mentors would say, I said, what are we doing here? She goes, I'm helping you become the real you. So now I look back underneath all that programming and stuffed emotions and conditioning. I was operating from not the real me, not the real Nina. So once I started doing that, the relationships fell off and it was tough. But I think also I became the person I should be with all those boundaries and being connected to who I was. There was nothing wrong. Those people you were used to being me that way. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. And when people leave your life, I now look at it, they served my they served a lesson in my life. And now they can't stay here. They need to find either they stay with the same relationships or they move on to other relationships. And even with me, I find my relationships are always evolving now that I've stepped into the new Nina.
What role then do you think guilt and shame plays in keeping people stuck and not able to make those changes?
Yeah, guilt is hard. And I guilt was really, really hard. I remember for me, that was a hard emotion. But I also learned that guilt is one of the most what's that? Is not one of the strongest emotions. It'll keep you stuck longer. So guilt is hard to work through. Oh, I can't say no. What they think of me. Oh my God. That was hard. And then the shame part. Oh, what will people think of me? But then I also got to the point where I'm like, when I was sick or when I was going through all this, where were all these people? And even through the illness, even through the overwhelm financially, whatever it was, because I had it was basically that journey was deep. So things were just coming there was a lot of chaos, right? As I'm shifting energetically. I still had to pay the mortgage. I still had to look after my children, I still had a job to hold. Where were all those people? So when I journalized or looked at that part of myself, I was able to, that shame kind of now there's no shame, but that was another period that I went through the motion of shame and guilt. And now it's like, if it comes up, I sit with it. Where did it come from? I'm able to connect the dots so much quicker. It's gone it dissipates within seconds, minutes, it's gone.
Those two things, guilt and shame. We can be shamed into staying stuck. We can be guilted into people pleasing, not only externally, but internally as well. And the thing with shame is, and I think you touched on this earlier, from our childhood experience, if it's coming from, if I was raised to be the type of person that I am going to say yes from my parents down, right? What they ask of me, I do. And, I'm going to be the good son.
Right.
Some people take that into the world and say, okay, I want to be the good partner. They're always saying yes. I want to be the good friend. They're always saying yes.
Mhm.
And we talked about if you do that, no, you can get shamed into it. Maybe share with us some tips to maintain the courage to say no, to be firm. Because as you mentioned, sometimes we're battling between two different identities, the person I used to be and the person that I'm becoming.
Hmm. So, on one point I want to touch on is a lot of my shame and guilt came from childhood. Belief systems as a woman culturally, but it's not even culture. I think women in general are told to be good girls, don't say that, don't do that, and then they develop that sense of, oh, I'm not good enough, you know, and they feel bad, they feel guilt, they feel shamed by everything. Okay. So, but once you start healing that, I think for me, it was really kind of looking at my emotions and feeling them, and then start looking at the dots. Where are my emotions? Where do those emotions come from? For me, it was childhood, of course, and the programming, and then how that shaped me to the person I was before. And then once I started shifting, um, those emotions are already also started shifting. So I think some of the things that tools that you can use is really feeling your emotions. Um, And another thing that helped me was journalize, write down. I think we don't write, we keep everything in our mind. We need to bring that down on paper from the subconscious onto the conscious onto paper. And you'll be shocked. And I wasn't a true believer of journalizing until I started doing it. Um, I really believe that things come to surface and more like, wow, I didn't know that. Wow, you have a lot of aha moments. And another thing is we're not, as women, I'm not sure about how the men deal with this, but we're also multitasking all the time. And because we're multitasking all the time, we're not feeling. I did this my entire life. I was an autopilot. I didn't know how I got to work some days. I got to work. I didn't feel. And now, and I remember my coaches when I first started doing it, the simple things was just to sit with myself. And that was still hard. And we distract. That's huge for me, even during the journey. And I got that, I would say around 23 or 24. And the gist of it, like I said, was 2025. I would people drink it away. They drink, they distract by going shopping. That was huge for me. Social media, I do not have anything on my except on my laptop because I find I'm as empath, I'm very sensitive to social media and all that energy. So we will distract by dating, by getting to the wrong relationships. And I mentioned or emotionally overeating. We just go on autopilot. And it's not until we actually stop and start feeling. And that is, I have to be honest, my journey wasn't easy because I didn't learn how to feel into my late 30s. So I had stuffed all this I had stuffed in my body, in my bones, in my ligaments, all those things that were sore, the depression, the exhaustion. Well, it was me. I had never felt things. So my journey was a feeling, and it's a long journey. I can tell why. People sometimes ask me why it's so long. And I'm like, I look at them in a funny way and say, I was a slow learner. But really, I now looking back of it, I just had a lot of things I hadn't processed. So my body took it. The body is actually a miracle looking back. It can take on so much, but if you haven't felt anything and then all those suppressions have to come out, I'm so lucky the mentors I got because now I will actually know what a woman is feeling when I'm coaching or hearing her story because I had to feel it all. And my emotions came out 3 times because they were suppressed so deep in my subconscious. Like anger was really hard. Like some of the women they may already know. I had done some work, but I hadn't done enough to be where I am today.
You mentioned multitasking, and it's like the person who has one cell phone in one hand, their food in the other, and they have the TV, and they're trying to navigate the world around them as well, right?
You
It's
can't
tough.
multitask. And you know, the biggest gift I learned, um, and watching men, I watch that. I observe. I'm a real observer now. I think I always was, but I didn't say anything. But now I really observe, and I see how men, they're focused on one task. We actually can learn a lot from you. You actually, we're like, although we're running around the head cut off. Like, is there a need to? And then we're wondering why our head hurts, why your stomach hurts, why your hormones out of balance, why you're stressed out. Because when you're doing all that running around with your head cut off, your cortisol's up. People don't know that part, right? We are the human body. That's another topic we go on. The human, because it has such deep healing on a cellular level. The human body is actually really amazing. And we have so many different hormones. And if we don't treat it with love and respect, it's going to start wearing down on you. And now, the minute I feel something's off in I'm quite highly intuitive as well with my body and really in touch with myself. If something comes up, and that's the beauty of emotions. Once you know how to feel emotions, you actually become your own self healer. I mean, I'm not saying don't go to doctors or anything, but you actually know, oh God, I think I know why I have that headache today. So that's one thing amazing about emotions and healing, to where I am today. I can self-diagnose myself. Okay, that person came to my life today. Okay. Do they need to go, or do I need to have a boundary talk with them? Yeah.
When you said women running around, they can learn from men to focus on one task. You remind me of a situation where there's an acquaintance of mine. She is having difficulty online. She says that she's being bullied, people writing nasty stuff about her, and she's trying to control the behaviors of other people. She's like, "Stop doing this, stop doing this, stop doing this," and she's running around. I asked her one day, I was like, "Do you enjoy, let's say it's Instagram, do you enjoy Instagram?" She's like, "Well, not really, it was fun, but because of all this." I was like, "So why don't you just stop being on there?" And she came up with excuse after excuse after excuse to stay on there. And I'm like, "But you're not enjoying it. Why put yourself through that?" Nina, she was at the point where the people that followed her, she would go and find out what videos they liked of other people that maybe she doesn't like and see if they wrote anything in the comments.
Oh my God. What I'm seeing from that, what you're sharing with me, this person was not self-aware. Okay. I was never that bad because I was so shut down. Okay. I was really shut down. So that happens when you haven't done the inner work I talk about. You haven't learned how to feel your emotions. You don't sit with it. Instead, you distract, you text, you go on social media. And like I said, it was interesting. And this happened just about a couple months ago. I was sitting there relaxing, and I'm like on a Pinterest. And I'm like, oh, my head feels heavy. And you know what? It wasn't very long after. I'm like, being on Pinterest is not relaxing, Nina. And it was like, it was, I would say literally that night, I deleted the app. I'm like, no, watching TV maybe, and that's another form of distraction. So I think this woman obviously isn't very self-aware. Okay. Once you become self-aware, like I said, you become your own best friend. But that doesn't
Yeah.
happen. It doesn't happen right away, but slowly let's sit with it. Let's feel it. Let's journalize. Oh God, I hate journalizing. Now it's my best friend. And feeling, I actually test myself now. I'm going to sit with this. Nina's just going to sit with. Nothing's going to happen because my journey was, I was in constant fear state. When you live in constant fear state, because that was part of my childhood programming as well. Um, you always think, and that was part of my anxiety because I was constant fear state. What were they going to think of me if I said no? What was this going to happen? And now someone does something, I'm like, oh, okay, Nina, let's sit with it. Like literally plop my down a couch and I'll just sit. And I'm like, and I'm also highly intuitive and also being an empath, which I found out during my journey. And I'm usually 10 steps ahead of people. I've already figured it out. Like, but I have to be so careful with my coaching or with people. Um, I'm okay with friends. Okay, can I share something? I always ask, can I share something with you? And they're okay with it. And same with clients as well, right? When I coach them. But yeah, I'm usually 10 steps ahead of them. So yeah, self-awareness, going back to your friend, self-awareness is so important. And once you start getting that, you know what? I truly believe your emotions are a gift. You've got them. Unfortunately, we've been programmed, and everybody has this programming. And it's not taught in schools. I hope there should be a subject on emotions. I really, or some sort of on self-care. And there's a little bit to emotions or a lot to emotions because it really needs to be taught because it wasn't taught in school. And there's a lot of suffering going on. So people don't know they're not connected to emotions. Yeah.
So, Nina, let me ask you one final question because you touched on self-awareness and you touched on emotions. What are three things you wish people knew about the importance of self-awareness when it comes to their relationships and why?
Wow. Looking back, I didn't have I didn't have any communication tools. I got married really young. I didn't have any communication tools. I think for me, I didn't know who I was. Um, I didn't have any self-care for myself. And if I didn't have any self-care or ways to regulate me, uh, yeah, there was no way I could be in a relationship. So I think um, one tool is to be emotionally aware of who you are, feel. I think I don't know if there's a really one tool. It's more like what works for you, right? I think for because on my journey, I'm thinking, well, if I had known how to feel my emotions, had effective boundaries, known what was happening to me, I would have healed faster. But no, I didn't. So what I can leave is stop. We get so busy in that relationship. We want to make that person happy. We want it to work out. And then we have children. It's like, no, it has to work out. But it's learning how to love yourself. And that comes in different ways. We can go coaching. We can start, even go to a small workshop where that resonates with you. Um, Talk to a friend. Maybe they can share some insights because you find the person that's looking at you, they're probably seeing something that you're not, right? So I know, I mean, family members may not share that with you, but I'm sure they know what's going on. But or your friends may know, but they're scared to say anything to you because you're friends. So I think it's important to reach out maybe to help outside. There's a lot of free resources out there too. You don't have to start paying a coach. I mean, I started with a lot of free resources. And then you decide which route you want to take. So I wouldn't say it's one tool fits all. It just